I'm Elliot Lawrence. My company's called mindmavericks.org. And I teach people how to think like Einstein. So at mindmavericks.org, we have developed brain games that teach you how to become a visionary. We teach you how to think like Einstein. When I usually tell people like that I do this, they go, what? How? Where? Well, I'm going to show you. This is not some kind of esoteric, mystical process, okay? I use scientific, practical, down-to-earth training methods. How did visionaries like Einstein and others do it? And how can you find your own creative genius? They did it. There was more than one that did it. What made them exceptional? What made them different than you? The only thing that made them different than you is that they happened to stumble upon a certain way of thinking. And so today we don't have that. You know, where do you go to be a visionary? Who trains you to do that? Schools aren't doing it. Schools are teaching you how to memorize. They're teaching you how to calculate. They're teaching you how to problem solve, but they are not teaching you how to be a visionary. Now, I'm not saying that those things aren't important. They are. But so is the other part, being able to visualize. Where do you go to do that? Well, we've developed the science of doing that. How does it begin? Well, the first thing begins by understanding that we have certain mindsets that are important. The alignment of sound in a certain way creates music. The alignment of light in a certain way creates art. The alignment of geometry creates architecture. And the alignment of your thoughts in a certain direction will create visionary thoughts and higher thinking. And we're going to talk about that. In order to do that, we have to learn how to, and this is so overused, and yet I cannot find a better way to put it. You have to learn how to think out of the box. Everybody talks about thinking out of the box, but has anyone actually showed you how to think out of the box? There are certain techniques that you can use that will teach you how to think out of the box. Now, I got this from doing a lot of different kinds of studies, but the most important thing that I got it from was doing improvisational comedy. But I'm going to give you a little example of something to begin with so you can understand how to align your mind differently. So please indulge me with this just for a moment, and I'd like you to close your eyes, and I'd like you to imagine yourself traveling through space as fast as you possibly can. Feel what that feels like. Okay, double it and see how that feels. Okay, double it again. I said, imagine yourself traveling through space as fast as you possibly can. And what happened? You formed an imaginary picture of how fast is fast. Why? Because when I said double it, you could. And then I said, try it, double it again. And then you formed another imaginary picture. Now, some of you could have done it again, and some of you couldn't. But even if you couldn't imagine it any faster, you still had an imaginary picture. This time the picture was, I just can't imagine this any faster. But we live in an infinite paradigm simply because I can imagine it to be so. So there is always faster. And the only limitation, the only reason we're limited is because we haven't dilated those neural pathways to your visionary part of your mind enough. But the games that I show you how to play will do that for you. Einstein's formula, E equals mc squared, is about the conversion of energy. But more so than that, there are different kinds of energy. We only experience a very small spectrum. A small spectrum from the standpoint of we feel gravity, we feel vibration, sound vibration, light, but we also have radio waves, we have X-rays, we have gamma rays. And then there's even a new form that people discovered, dark energy, dark matter. These have effects. These things are going on all the time. Just because we don't consciously experience it, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Well, what I'm going to talk about is creative wavelengths. Now, here's something interesting. These are starlings, and how do they know how to move together? They're not having a conversation. It wasn't pre-programmed. They're not even going in a straight line. It's kind of an amorphous thing, and yet they know how to do it because something in them is sensing this. They are having a communication with each other. The same thing is true with fish. They do the same thing. Somehow they know how to move together. There is something going on that they're picking up on. And that same thing is related to even the aurora borealis. The same kind of pattern that we're feeling and experiencing. There are these forces that are going on. And how can we tap into that? So now I'm going to show you how we do tap into it. Fashion. Every year, people come up with a color they decide is going to be that color, a particular style that's going to be. Have you ever tried to start a fashion? No, it's a kind of a group understanding that happens. Fads, the pet rock. When the pet rock came out, it was everybody wanted a, well, most everybody wanted a pet rock. Now, if you gave somebody one, they'd probably pick it up and throw at you. Baby names. Baby names. All of a sudden, there's an influx of a particular group of baby names. This happens all the time. Why? Why is it? It's because we're picking up on things, whether we're doing it consciously or unconsciously. I begin to show you how to do it consciously. How does this relate to you? Well, if you're a designer, this is really important because it will put you more on the cutting edge. Inventions. Sometimes at the patent office, the same kind of patent comes in within an hour of each other. Leibniz and Newton, they discovered calculus approximately at the same time, separately from each other. When it is time for an idea to happen, it's time for it to happen. I'm not making this up, this really happens. And I'm going to show you how this happens to you every day. When we speak to each other, we make statements, but it's not the words. It's a common state of mind meant. Do you know what I mean? We do this all the time. So how can we become more conscious of this, and how can we develop this from the standpoint of thinking like Einstein? Well, Einstein said, half jokingly, the secret to being a genius is not to reveal your sources. So what does that mean? What that means is that he knew that ideas did not come from us, they come through us. We are receivers and transmitters. And we do this whether we realize it or not. What happens is that there is a connection to what's going on in our brain and the universe. If you look at the structure of the universe, which they've been able to map, and you look at the structure of the brain, which they've been able to map, we live in really remarkable times, it's the same kind of structure. And there is the same kind of impulses going on in the universe. What I show you how to do is when you learn something like math, for example, in the beginning it's difficult, and then you struggle with a little bit, and then it becomes easier and easier. Why does it become easier? It's becoming easier because you're dilating that neural pathway to solving math. The same thing is true for your imagination. I have brain games that will exercise your imagination, and you will be able to dilate your neural pathways to the imagination. Now, the problem with my training with this, with you, with anyone who does this, is that it's a different sensation. It's a different sensation. So it's like if I'm trying to describe to you what vanilla tastes like, and you've never tasted vanilla, how could I describe that to you? Vanilla, or something of this nature, is a base experience that you have to spend some flight time in that experience and develop a taste for it, and other things are compared to it. I'm going to talk about this from a different angle. What is inspiration? Well, inspiration is basically chemistry. What happens is that you have these neurons, and there's a gap between them, and a leap of electricity happens, and that's called synaptic development. And from that point, it also releases a chemistry. Now, one little neuron on its own will not affect that much, but what happens is if you do multiple connections, there's profound things that happen, and they release endorphins and serotonin. So what we do at mindmavericks.org is we do the reverse engineering of inspiration. The games that I show you how to do will produce the chemistry, and that chemistry will produce the inspiration. Now, here's something that's really interesting. Again, as above, so below. These are called sprites. What you're looking at is, this is the cloud layer of a lightning storm, and that's around 30,000 feet. But when you have a supercell of electricity, an abundance of electricity building up, it shoots up a plasma to 60,000 feet. When this hits this plasma, they have recorded this. It actually affects the magnetic field of the Earth. So if I can show you how to increase the electricity in your brain, it in effect also calls out to something, some creative wavelength, to bring it back to you. And the way you bring it back to you is the next thing. And that is that after I do my games, I have you be quiet. And when you do that, all of a sudden you create a vortex. And one of the properties of vortex is it begins to bring things to you. There's all kinds of ideas that come to you. The other aspect of this is that when we do something like meditation, for example, it's great when you do it in a perfect circumstance. But life isn't perfect. Life is chaos. We have to learn how to deal with that. So part of what I train people how to do is I speed up the chaos. And when I speed up the chaos, I show you how you can become the eye of the storm. And when you're the eye of the storm and you are in that flight time in the eye of the storm, you start accumulating energy. And if you accumulate enough energy, just like in a black hole, it starts to produce gamma rays. And you think that this isn't true? Well, it's been shown through neurological testing that when the creative side of your brain is stimulated, it produces gamma wavelengths. Here's the thing. There are three basic processes. One is cleansing the magnetic field. The other is channeling and holographic thinking. And then the third is learning how to become an observer. Now, I know that cleansing the magnetic field sounds a little woo-woo-y, but I'm going to explain to you what that really is about. We are all electrochemical magnetic factories. And if we change one aspect, it affects the other two. So chemically, we can do it through diet or fasting or fragrances or experiencing certain things in nature. It changes our chemistry, and it affects our electrical charge, and it affects our magnetic field. Electrically, laughter, overcoming fear, positive emotion. Laughter has been shown to cure disease. So obviously, something going on electrically has affected something chemically, and it also affects your magnetic field. If you take an iron rod and you hit it against some concrete, for a few moments it becomes a magnet. So the stamping of feet, movements, dance, twirl, the Sufis would spin their magnetic field against the magnetic field of the Earth to cleanse their magnetic field. Children do it all the time. But it's simpler than that. It's dance, it's running, amusement rides. The thing about amusement rides is not that it's the experience of the amusement ride itself, but it's how good you feel when it stops. Now, how do we know when we've cleansed the magnetic field? We feel good. We feel good about ourselves. We feel good about not criticizing ourselves. And it enables us to now begin to do what I call holographic thinking. Now, holographic thinking is using the left and right hemisphere of your brain at the same time. The left being the logical, the right being the intuitive. Now, one of the things that creates holographic thinking is perspective drawing. Because in perspective drawing, you have to have vanishing points, and there's a technical aspect, but you also have to visualize within the context of that. Well, perspective drawing was so powerful, it created the Renaissance. There would not have been a Renaissance if there wasn't a perspective drawing. Now, it doesn't mean that people hadn't thought holographically or three-dimensionally in the past, but it was the first time you could teach people to do so. So what does that mean? It's not just perspective drawing. It means that ideas are not linear. Ideas are spherical, and you can step away from them, and you can take other ideas, and you can mix them up and create third ideas. That's what made the Renaissance such a mind-amazing experience. The third aspect is being the observer. And so when you realize that we are not this electromagnetic factory, this is a mechanism that's going on, and you realize that we are not what the creative thing is coming through us and not from us, then who are we? We are that which observes that. And so I always say to people, are you your eyeballs, or are you that which looks out of your eyeballs? Yeah, think about that. Our face is sort of like a screen that we are looking out of. And the problem is that when we do that, which is easy to do, I just mentioned it, but the problem is we forget to do that. But when we do that, we are able to visualize, just like you're creating that vortex. And of course, the biggest obstacle is self-judgment. And this is anything that keeps you from doing anything is about self-judgment. Shoulda, coulda, woulda, wishing to be liked. We all are trained to wish to be liked. But it's important to be able to do things not because we wish to be liked. It's important to do things because we feel compelled to do them. What is self-confidence? Self-confidence is not about being right all the time. Self-confidence is learning how to be wrong, how to laugh at yourself, make fun of yourself, laugh off mistakes, and move on. What is a mistake? It's just simply stepping from an expected reality into an unexpected reality. And the real mistake is to hesitate. The real mistake is to, when we trip over the doorway, to fall down. Better to learn how to turn that trip into a new dance step. And that's what I do in my training and show you how to do that. There are 7 basic guidelines for creating by yourself, but there are also things that have to be done in teamwork. When it comes to creating by yourself, here's a few things to think about. Creating with a whimsical attitude. Now, some people feel that they have to be serious when they create. But you know what? It doesn't matter how serious you are. It's not going to make what you have any more depthful. Whatever you have in your being is going to come out eventually. And you're not going to make more being. Being comes from transforming difficult situations. When you are whimsical, you're able to step away from your ideas, leave this one, go to another one, and have maybe 10 ideas, and then come back and be able to choose from them. I taught this to my students at the Academy of Art University in San Francisco, and we had a design competition with 17 of the top design schools in the country, and my students won first place, second place, third place, and all 13 honorable mentions except for one. Why? Because they had more to choose from. And they weren't immersed or identified with any one particular idea. So they were able to come with hybrids and all kinds of other ideas. The other thing is to dare to fail, dare to start over. You know, if you're worried about making a mistake, forget it. You're not going to be successful at anything. And Robert Kennedy says, fail greatly. And any great person knows about, Teddy Roosevelt knew how to fail greatly too. I used to tell my students that the difference between them and a professional is a professional made the first 1,000 mistakes right away. You're going to make mistakes. Make the first, make the second. Don't make the first mistake. Get them over with. You're going to make them. You're going to make 1,000. You're going to make 2,000. But if you're going to belabor each mistake, you're not going to be able to move fast enough, especially to keep up with what we need to do in this world. The other one is the road to great ideas are paved with idiotic ones. If you wake up an opera singer out of bed and expect them to sing a beautiful note right away, what would you get? You get the most atrocious sounds you'd ever heard. If you were to judge that person singing based on those first few sounds, you'd think they were the worst opera singer in the world. But they have to make a bunch of different sounds. It's called warming up. So if you're doing something creative for the first time, aren't you warming up for the first time? How could you possibly judge yourself for the first 1,000 things that are coming out of your head? Not only that, a lot of these stupid things that come out of our head might have a good application. But it's our judgment that keeps us from doing that. The other thing is accepting offers, accepting what comes your way, or restrictions. A lot of people have creative blocks. And they think that they have a creative block and they need to open up and do more stuff. And I say, let's do the opposite. Let's restrict what you're going to do. If you are having a creative block and you got 7 colors, deal with 2 colors and see what you can do. There's a willful thing inside of us, and the more we limit it, the more it wants freedom. So it's a little psychological thing you can do to develop more creativity. Now, this is really interesting about transforming mistakes. I saw this cellist years ago, and he loved that cello. He loved the sound of that cello. He loved the feeling in that cello. When he played, he didn't care if he was playing in front of himself or a million people. He loved that experience. He was channeling that experience. And at a certain point, he made like this really scratchy note. It was like a mistake. And he took that mistake and he turned it into the most beautiful, sweet sound you ever heard in your life. To the point where you wanted him to make another mistake. Because you were watching in the moment the transformation of something. And that's the beauty of not judging yourself and allowing these ideas to flow. Now, in teamwork training, no matter what you do on your own, and there's a lot of things you can do that on your own, there is no replacement for teamwork training. Now, what I've done is this is the improv group that I ran in Las Vegas, and I have taken games that I played for them, and I have specifically pared them down and made them simple so that I can show anybody how to do that. And so I've developed these specific brain games that will show you how to cleanse your magnetic field, do holographic thinking, and be able to observe, be the eye to storm. All the things I talked about happens in about the first 5 minutes of my training. In teamwork, you have feedback. You can't get that on your own. It's really important to have feedback. Peer pressure is good. We don't or do certain things because of peer pressure, but in these trainings that I do, I use the peer pressure to get you to eliminate your peer pressure. It's sort of like the snake eating its own tail. And it's also important to have trusted guidance in a teamwork situation. And if you're a team leader, it's not about your ideas, it's about you facilitating other people's ideas. And in regards to that, everybody's idea is important. Even if they're not an expert, it doesn't mean that what they have just channeled isn't valid. It's up to you as the leader to find the correct application of this. And the last, which is really, really important, and I talk about this when I do corporate training seminars, is that in improvisational theater, when a scene isn't going well, the mechanical thing to do is to get louder and to try and control the scene. But instead of doing that, the way you make it work is you make the other player look good. And if everybody's making the other player look good, then the scene works beautifully. The same thing can happen in a company. Instead of rewarding the person that makes the basket all the time, reward the assists. If you're rewarding the assists, everybody's going to assist instead of trying to be the star of the show, and you're going to have a much more productive company. I have over 1,200 brain games, and probably you would, if you were to learn, you would never get to the 1,200. You'd probably, after about 20, 30, start making up games yourself. And I have a lot more to talk about and not much time, but I'm going to do a little demonstration here. Jay, hello. Would you mind coming up here for a second? No, it's you, because you're the one who said to me at lunch that you don't have much imagination. Is that true?
That's true.
Did I tell you what I was going to? I told you I was going to do something, but I didn't tell you what I was going to do. Is that correct?
No.
I haven't paid you off or anything?
Not yet.
Okay. So make up a story right now. Okay. I'm just going to ask you questions, and I want you to just, as ridiculous as they are, just come up with the first thing that comes to your mind, okay? You're standing in an imaginary place. Where is it?
Outside.
You're outside, and somebody's standing next to you. Who is it? Me. James, okay. And then suddenly you pick up a piece of paper. What color is it?
White.
And there's one word on it. What does the word say?
Black.
The word says black, and suddenly somebody steps on your foot. Who is it?
A giant.
A giant, okay. I could ask him questions all day, and you would have answers all day. It's not a lack of answers. It's a lack of questions. Our imaginations will fill in the blanks. So we can do that with ideas and writing. We can do it with images. Our minds will fill in the blanks, and we need to learn how to trust that. And what I do is I train people how to do it. Thank you very much. You did a very good job. You can pass.
All right.
And if anybody has any questions, let me know. Any questions? Yes. Excuse me? All my accomplishments. When I was a kid, people would ask me, what do you want to do when you grew up? And I said, everything. And nobody took me seriously, so I did. Any other questions? Which what?
Which one do you like the best?
Which one what?
Which career?
Oh, what career? What I'm doing right now. There is nothing more exciting to me than watching the concrete getting dislodged out of people's minds. Anybody else? Yes? Very good question. When they dissected Einstein's brain, they found that his corpus callosum, which is the connection between the left and right hemisphere of his brain, was thicker than most people. I was so happy to hear about this because before I learned about it, which was only about a year ago, I've been teaching people how to do this for over 20 years. So whether he was born that way or he was able to create that, it doesn't matter because it was that, and I can show you how to do that. Any others? Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.